Hi, everybody. My name is Zeb Welborn, President and CEO of the Chino Valley Chamber of Commerce. Today, I am here with Bobby Spiegel, the past CEO of the Corona Chamber of Commerce, somebody who has left a lasting impact in the chamber industry. Right down the street from the Chino Valley Chamber of Commerce, I had a great opportunity to participate in his leadership program, which Bobby would say we ripped off and duplicated and put into the Chino Valley Chamber of Commerce. So there's lots of connections, and we've partnered on our economic forecast for years together. So Bobby, I'm just wanted to say thank you for chatting with me today, and thank you for all your mentorship and advice and kindness over the years.
Thank you, sir. And I just want to correct you on one thing. I proudly say that you've ripped off and duplicated. Anytime that any chamber can benefit from another chamber, that's a blessing. It is truly a blessing. And I'm glad yours is going so well.
Yeah, no, thank you, Bobby. So yeah, today I just wanted to, pick your wisdom for chamber industry peers and colleagues, and hopefully share this with some other folks. And so I just want to dive in a little bit. Like, talk to me about your entrance into chamber world. Like, how did you get involved in the Corona Chamber in the first place?
Goes back to 1958, long before many people were born. And yes, I was born before then, but just barely by 3 years. So our family located to Corona. One of the main reasons was the Chamber of Commerce being so welcoming and so accommodating to take in people from another state that was looking to have opportunity. And that were my parents that were coming in for an electrical contracting venture. And it was either going to be the high desert or it was going to be Corona. And it ended up being Corona 100% because of the chamber. Throughout the years, in fact, we've been a member since 1958 in October. And we have been involved. I remember fond memories of my parents being involved in the ambassador program and helping to do multiple different outreaches to different communities and throughout the state. Then fast forward in 1978, I opened up my first retail business, and I then felt it was just important to join the chamber. And within a year, I was put onto the board of directors, served a 3-year stint there, and then was asked to take a break for a year. And then I got busy with some other things in my life. We still stayed as members, and I was a chair of multiple different committees within the chamber. So long before I became a hired staff person, I had that connection with the chamber. I just didn't like some of the direction the chamber was headed, and I asked if there was ever an opening to please let me know. I talked to a couple of the board members, and so lo and behold, the position became available. And I really wanted to come in and fix things because the person that had been there had always said no. And it wasn't no it was the style of how they would say no. I would ask them. There was a big issue with the city and taxes and, utility user tax that was being proposed. And we felt very strong that we're a heavy manufacturing and industrial base community. And if this utility tax was put into the business community, it would have driven 2 or 3 large companies at the time employing 200 to 250 employees. They would close their doors. It would be that big of an impact. So the gentleman that was the CEO at the time refused to even look at it. And I said, why aren't we doing this? He says, well, we can't afford it. And I said, Dave, you don't even, tell me what you think you need. Maybe we can raise the money somehow. So long story short, I applied after Dave left. I was not hired. I was not given that opportunity. They had brought in somebody else, and that person lasted about a year and a half. And then the position came open again. And then I reapplied, and then they wanted people with a lot of degrees, a lot of education. And I am a person of education of hard knocks. I did go to college, but I did not complete even to get an AA. And then finally, a couple of years surpassed, and the position opened, and I did not want to apply because they wanted all these degrees, but they came after me and said, please apply. And long story short, I was hired. That was I started on May 11th, May 11th, 2001. And I served that same chamber, my home chamber, as president CEO until November 25th, 2025.
Excellent. So it sounds like you had when you started, was it just you? I mean, how many team members did you have? How did that look when you took over? And you just mentioned you got hired, but were you hired as a CEO?
So I was first hired as the executive director. There was a staff of 4 people total with me, and very qualified, loving people. We just didn't know about any of the associations that were out there at the time. And I do want to do a plug for any organized organizational group. WACE to me is by far the best. Now, I will do a disclaimer. I have not really been involved with any of the other organizations. There used to be one that we were involved with that has folded, but that was Southern California Association of Chambers. And it was through the WACE that because of Laurent, he had done a program in Riverside and had reached out to us. And I went to that seminar and I said, oh my gosh, I cannot believe that there is like an organization. I have had no idea on what this world had. I thought it was just up to us. So with that being said, I delved into WACE and went and attended the seminars and the conference, eventually served on their board for a little bit, but fell in love with the work of chamber life.
Yeah, that's great. Now I'll tell you one of the things when I first, because I was involved, very similar story to you. I was involved as a member. Uh, got on the board very quickly. Served as chair of the board. We had a transition of leadership too, where it was not something I aspired to at the beginning. But one of the things I do remember was just like anytime anybody talked about like a chamber that was doing it well, it was always Bobby Spiegel over in Corona. So I just want to say that was like my first foray into who's doing things well in the chamber world. Your name would always come up, and you're one of our local partners in the chamber space, because there was, like, when I first got involved, there was a lot of turnover in our chamber, but there was a lot of turnover in a bunch of other local chambers, so it seemed like there was no consistency of people that were there, and you had been like a stalwart over there in Corona. So
And if I can just add, as the CEO, we're going to get all the accolades. We're going to get all the praise about things. It's about our staff, our team, our board of directors. So as you are viewing this as a CEO, you pat yourself on the back, but don't get hung up on reading your press clippings, because today whether you're front page news of great things, you can be front page news of something went wrong. And whether it was you, a board member, a staff member that did something that was embarrassing, just own up. Let's settle it. Let's move on. But the accolades, please pass on to your team how much they mean to you, and make it sincere. Don't just read from a script, but be sincere. The same thing with your board of directors. I got to tell you, so many times people get frustrated that some new staff or individuals that don't quite understand. It's like board members, ambassadors, and volunteers for the chamber. They work day in and day out, paying their bills for their business, employing other people, creating jobs, doing everything right. And they turn around and they come to us and they volunteer, whether it's on a committee, an event, maybe it's an ambassador where they're helping the grand openings, or maybe it's the higher level of commitment like a board of directors. These people are typically the ones that are writing the checks to fund the chamber, to support the projects. So make sure that you understand and show your appreciation to them, because they have multiple other ways that they can spend their time and their talent and their treasures.
Over the course of your career, you've accomplished a lot of things, and you and your team and your board has accomplished a lot of things. But what are some of the things that you would point to that you say you're most proud of during your time at the Corona Chamber?
Well, my biggest pride of things is the relationships that have been built. Today, as I am now retired into 2 full months of retirement, people are coming up to me and telling me stories that I had forgotten about, things that we had done as a chamber. And most of it, yes, was me as the CEO that took the action and did what I needed to do. But it's the impact that you have on people's lives. And as a CEO, you're going to be entrusted with stories and information that these people would never tell anyone else, from business dealings to their personal life to whatever it may be, and they need to trust you. And I have a very active wife in the community. She's an elected what is she on? She's the board of supervisors for Riverside County. She is the highest powered elected woman in all of Riverside County. There are so many things that I never shared with her because I needed to build that trust with the person that sat down with me. It's kind of like, and I don't want to get spiritual, but it's kind of like that priest or the rabbi that when someone sits down with you and they tell you and they pour everything out, you just need to, I guess we're kind of like therapists. I'm sure, Zeb, you've gone through this too, and you sit there and you just listen and just spending your time with them. They feel very good about that. With that being said, there's lots of community things that have transpired. I mean, I go back to the horrific situation when we had the notification of those 13 kids that were shackled to their bedposts in a neighboring community. And 6 of the adult children, so to speak, were placed at Corona Regional Medical Center. And I received a call from one of my board members at the time, and she says, I need help. I'm sure you saw it all over the news. But long story short, we became the funding source, the collection source for this group of kids that needed some stuff. I mean, these people didn't even have personal care products, clothing. So after we publicized it for just one day, Amazon was in and out of our doors with cases of all these things that were being shipped to us from all over the world. And so we stopped doing that. But long story short, we were able to, in our little small community, collect over $225,000 that we turned over to a foundation that took care of helping those kids. That was great. Now, someone's going to say, well, how the heck does that matter with a Chamber of Commerce? Where is that? That's everything about the Chamber of Commerce. That's everything about our community. We are nothing without the residents and taking care of our people. At the same time, we need to stay focused in what we do best, and that's economic development and advocacy.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. I mean, I think when I look at different chamber CEOs or chamber professionals, I see chamber professionals with different skill sets. Like they have different things that they excel at, that they do really well. And you see those. Do you have something that you lean on where you say, like, this is something I feel like during my time in the chamber, we did do really well at the Corona Chamber? Was there something you can point to on that front?
On the skill sets, you're right. Every person has different skill sets, but I need it to be real. If it comes from the heart, sometimes it has to overrule the mindset of things. I think that, and I don't know if I'm going down the wrong side here, but I'm going to focus on our advocacy stuff that we were jumping into. And we made a decision years ago. As a board, they decided we wanted to have a voice, but they also wanted to put limitations and not endorse any candidates. In fact, when I applied, they had a strong policy that no one could be politically involved. And I had said, well, my wife was then going to run for city council and or city treasurer and then city council eventually. And they had said, well, you can do that. Absolutely. You can support your wife. Other than that, I could not publicly endorse any of the candidates. And so we got involved in tremendous legislative efforts. And again, going back to being a heavy industrial and manufacturing based organization or community here in Corona, we found ourselves traveling to Sacramento continually and meeting with different people long before Zoom was even around. So we really made some major impacts within different industry levels.
Yeah, was there any piece of legislation that you're like that you feel like you moved the needle on? Because that's one of those things where we do a lot in in terms of engaging with our elected officials, in terms of submitting letters of support, in terms of getting businesses to kind of invest and share their stories. Is there anything there? But it's kind of like for me, sometimes it's a little bit like we did those things, and like, how much of an impact did that make in the scenario? Do you feel like there's something where you're like, yeah, this is something we clearly had an impact on?
Absolutely, but keep in mind that what was done was for that period, and a lot of things have changed since then. So we were walking the halls of Sacramento, and there was some legislation coming up about, and I'm going to use the wrong wording, but it's not styrofoam, but there's a long word that is what it is. But styrofoam, I guess, is a trademark thing. But we have an organization, a company in town, or we used to, called DART. And DART was also in, I believe, Lodi, California. And they were investing over millions of dollars to do a recycling part of the styrofoam cups and trays that the school districts serve the kids their food on. And so someone was going to ban styrofoam from California. And it's not styrofoam, it's the proper wording of whatever it's supposed to be called. And our assembly member at the time was a gentleman that's from Corona. His name was Jeff Miller. Is Jeff Miller. He's still alive. And Jeff had heard about it, heard we were walking the halls. We got summoned in right away and on the floor, and we presented, I mean, right from the cuff and just from the heart, and expressed where we were standing on why we felt they needed to know that it is a recyclable item. So long story short, we were able to make a very positive impact. Now, fast forward, it's been several years since that happened. Dark Container now is closing their operation in Corona, California. And unfortunately, we've lost over the years over 400 jobs that were local here. With that being said, that's just a sign of the times. They felt that they need to put their resources elsewhere. You can fight Sacramento only so long. And with that being said, whatever community, whatever state represents you, if they're not business friendly, you're going to have a career forever of being able to make an impact. And these impacts may be small and they may only last a year, because any very good legislation that's in a state will be there on a short period of time. Any bad legislation will keep coming back and getting proposed. For whatever reason, people that get elected do not understand how to sign both sides of a check. And what I mean by that is they've never really had the responsibility as a business owner or a manager of an organization that is responsible. If I was in the chamber world continuing, I would put together a candidates forum and education program, kind of like a school for people running for council, for school board, for state assembly, and teach them what the chamber does and what businesses do. And it is amazing how many elected officials don't understand how difficult it is to run a business. I have business owners that have stayed awake at night worrying how they're going to pay the insurance premium, how they're going to make payroll. Yeah. I mean, when you go back to when I started in May of 2001, we did payroll with hand checks. And I would hand the check to them, and I would say, today is not a good day for you to take that check to the bank. And we were so upside down, and it took several months for us to get corrected. But this is, it was because of my business background, I understood how to talk to the staff. I also understood how to talk to my vendors and tell them, I know that we owe you for a stationery company at the time. I know, we're 90 days late, but I need to have paper for us to be able to continue. So I'm going to ask you to allow me to pay for that, and I'll pay a little bit on my old payments. You have to be able to do that. With that being said, the elected officials put laws into action and they think it's a great idea. It looked great on paper, but when it gets applied, it is horrible. So a couple of things that I would do with this kind of a course would be to bring in different elements of business professionals that can kind of share some of their headaches and some of the things that they go through. And especially when you're dealing with Sacramento in our situation, of what impact that's going to make for them running their business. Most all business owners want to follow the law. They want to give their employees the very best of everything. With that being said, when there's hundreds, if not thousands, of new laws that are put into the books each year, it makes it very difficult for a business that is very small to be able to navigate that. And that's where the chamber can come in. And if there's funding available where you can have someone that understands all those things, that would be great. But we need to really get more business-minded people into public office.
I couldn't agree more on that front. That's something that we're working on as well. So it sounds like that's something you would have aspired to in the near future, given the opportunity. Am I understanding that right?
Yeah, I mean, as I'm seeing how horrible it is, one other thing that I would love to champion, and I would love to see either WACE, and I don't know if they'll do it state by state, but we need to get something on the books that says when a law goes into effect regarding businesses, it is in for a 2-year window. And then at the 2-year window mark, they're going to evaluate and have a full report how it's been impacting the businesses positively and negatively, whether it's really served the purpose of what the initial bill was presented as. And then if it hasn't, then by year 3, it comes off the books. If it has done everything that it was supposed to, then great, move on, keep it on. But I think that there needs to be kind of like a period of time so that because bad bills it'll just kill businesses. And then you got to have people, and you'll probably need to cut this out because I'm going to get very political here, but our governor needs to frickin' leave. He should not go. He should not be promoted to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. He has destroyed the economic vitality of California. This insane thing that he put in about the richest people are going to pay these taxes. You see how well that's done. See how many of them have vacated and relocated to different states. Thank you to California. Anyway, I'm done. I'm done on that rant. Vote Bianco.
Yeah, no, that's good. So we're gonna shift to the leadership program because that's something I participated in and went through it with you. And there's two things that struck out to me about going through that and just like and observationally and also going through ours over the last 4 years is you've done a really good job at connecting with that large business sector. And one of the things I think from people who are starting out in the chamber industry or our colleagues that are just getting started is those relationships feel like they take a long time to develop and build and that trust that you've developed. I guess and I'm trying to do that here in our community, but even still, it's kind of challenging for me after doing this for 7 years to build those relationships with some of our larger enterprises in town, which it feels like you have really strong relationships with the CEOs of those entities and stuff. Do you have any advice or tips on how to build relationships with some of those large businesses in town that we might be able to share with others?
Yesterday, I had the opportunity to have a quick meeting with one of my past chairs and her husband's employers. There was some tragedy that happened back last Tuesday. The gentleman was fine. Everything was great. This is it's a partnership. And on Wednesday, he didn't wake up. So he died. And I said to her, I said, my gosh, we need to get a card from the chamber. Now here, I'm retired already 2 months, almost 2 months, but these are things that I think of. She said, well, who do we send it to? I said, you send it to the company. You send it to the entire team and say, dear team, and I'm not going to say which company it is. You know, we heard of the horrific challenges and the passing of one of the founders and operators, and we're here for you. We, wrap our thoughts and prayers around each and every one of you as you go through a very difficult time. The Corona Chamber of Commerce, period. Those are the things that people will remember forever and ever and ever. Building relationships is an art that you need to do. You have to develop it, and everything that you tell someone needs to be sincere. I would go back to the times when people would walk in the door before we had salespeople, and they would want to join the chamber, and they were looking for us to sell them a membership. And I said, well, before you join, I just want to kind of interview you and learn a little bit about you. What does your company do? What would a perfect client or customer look like for you? Because a lot of times people would come in and want to sell us something, and they would join if we would buy their product. Well, that would be one of our standards that we would say to most people is we only will buy from our members. But we also had said, do not count on the chamber being your only customer, because you have to be able to diversify out and have a different customer base. So as I would meet with individuals, I needed to build their trust. If I got an opportunity to actually get into the CEO's office to meet with them, I would look around at the office to see how they had it decorated, what was in there. Were there pictures of their children? Were there hot rods? Were there whatever it was on there was important for us to focus in on. And I'd spend quite a bit of time on asking them questions. And eventually then that was how I got my foot in the door. There were some that I was really seeking out. And like you said, Zeb, we are fortunate. We have a very huge manufacturing and industrial base, and they've been there for years. And in our leadership program, what I wanted to do was make sure that we have different themed days. And one of the days, in fact, now it's 2 of the days, are dedicated to manufacturing touring. And I have handpicked, there's 8 different businesses that we have over the years traveled to and met with. And the successes of those businesses have evolved. All of them have messaging where they've either moved in from the neighboring county because they ran out of room and there was whatever it may have been, but they all have the same message that these people, the first people they met were the people from the Chamber of Commerce. You don't have to put my name in there. You can put your name in. That's what you're striving for. And you want to hopefully have an edifying experience where when they're talking to your leadership group, that there's total edification for you, for your chamber, and for your city that you represent. Because you want these people now that are in the leadership class to be able to be the cheerleaders for the chamber and your community and brag about how great things are. Listen, anyone can talk about the negative. You just pick up the newspaper, turn on the TV, watch any newscast. But what really is the secret sauce is when someone can take and promote something good.
Yeah, no, so that was a good transition to the community. You've put together a community good project, and do you know how many years you've been doing your leadership program?
I don't know the exact years because my brother, who long before me being the CEO, he was in the leadership class. So I want to say that it's got to be close to 50 years.
And then that community good, has that always been a piece of that, or is that something that has been added somewhere along those 50 years?
So it was definitely added. And proudly say that how you have edified me, I will edify Cindy Roth, who was the neighboring CEO for the Greater Riverside Chambers of Commerce. And I met with her and went through because I wanted to elevate and change ours up. Um, and so they have a project that they work on, and that was interesting. So we came back and we revised ours and created a project. I do also want to clarify, when my brother went through it and before I was the CEO, it was more for a leadership training program,
Uh-huh.
and I changed it to be something for executives and top managers, top people in companies. Um, we went from, at the time when I came on board, they were charging $250 to $500 for the entry fee. We're now just shy of $2,000. When we did the 250 to 500, we were pulling teeth to get 10 people to attend. Um, and now we go through and we interview in the neighborhood of 40 to 45 people, select down to about anywhere from 18 to 28 people in the class. And, people are paying, right. I think the year you were in, if I'm not mistaken, it was in the 15 to $1,900 range. But I don't know, but it's money is there for the top executives, and people will invest in that. When there's 10 classes in the year, you break that on down, it's only a couple $100 for each one of them. It's an important factor. Now, so many times CEOs are so wrapped up in their own businesses. This community impact project is a great way for them to really get to see a new side of things. And what we have done differently than other chambers, we make sure the project is done during the existing year that the class is together. So we interview like in July and August, and we start in September and we end in June. In that time frame, they all come, they meet each other for the first time typically. Some know each other, but they come with their ideas. And now we now have perfected where the very first day of orientation in September, they've come up with what the project's going to be. And while we want them to build the Taj Mahal, reality is they've only got 8 months to do things. So they need to get going on it and pick something and do it. And we've had some amazing projects, even during COVID. So before COVID was really identified, we had a project that was to help build out the USO out at the March Air Reserve Base. And it was amazing. They had 9 different tracks that they were trying to accomplish on it, and they got through 7 of them, even with COVID. It was pretty amazing.
Yeah, no, and I participated in that, and we did bring that to our chamber too. So I'm just thinking of that like impact, So some things the chamber brings to the table. That's certainly something that I would point to at our chamber. Going through that community good project. Is there anything you mentioned that USO thing, but is there anything that you would want to highlight as far as a
Well,
community good project the
yeah,
chambers?
all of them. So there's an American Legion post that a great group of young men, and the reason it was the second one that was developed in Corona is back in the day there was some real hatred in our town. It was prejudice and whatnot. This was mainly Hispanics, and they weren't allowed to join the other post at the time, so they created their own. And 70 years later, they were at a point where it needed some love. And our group chose to take that on. and they revamped the kitchen because the refrigerators they were using were, not a commercial grade, and they were duct taped closed to keep the seal on and stuff. It was pretty pathetic. But what that did is it brought life to that group, and today they're thriving, and they've gone on from that project to fully refurbish the facility. In the last 7 years, they've done a full upgrade from a new roof to a new dance floor, new floor that includes like a dance floor type atmosphere. And they've done an amazing job. We did something with it was called the Parent Center, and that was for the school district. There's a lot of people that are poor and cannot afford, clothing from the retailers, and they usually do a secondhand store. Well, this group decided to go in and update the little closet, is what they call it. And they have brand name clothing that they went out and got. They made it more like a boutique. And so when kids go in with their families, it's like they're getting a shopping experience. Again, all of this is free. This group puts this all together and does this, and it's just been a beautiful impact. And we had a couple of people from the school district that were in the class that year. They weren't the ones that actually proposed it. It was another person that is working for a large nonprofit who was one of those clients as a child. And she knew how important it was that they were able to get some new clothing or some new clothing. It was new to them. And when she shared it, they went on down to the facility, and they all went for it, and it was beautiful. We did another one with the foster care. Many people don't realize, but when a foster student turns 18 years of age, they're out of the system immediately. And we put together through that year was a opportunity for them to do mentoring. People could mentor up to a year or 3 years, depending on their level of commitment. But it was, again, something that was just a great program. These things go on and on. There was a scholarship program out at one of the local colleges that they put together. They raised $10,000 and put it in for an annuity, and they used the interest off of that for a while to be able to have that continue to go on for 10 years. And that was very successful. So what we want is, as I had shared with all the applicants when we interviewed with them, and said, look, when you come with the idea, the whole group has to vote on it. And it's one project, and you go out, you all work together and get it done. And you want to be able to do something that you can take your kids and maybe even your grandkids and come back years later and say, I was part of this class and this is what we did here. I'll wrap it up with one more. We had an individual the day of orientation. We do a scavenger hunt to try and get people to get familiar with Corona and different things. And as they were leaving, one of the classmates got a phone call that his brother had passed. He had been in the hospital. Had overdosed about a week prior. But it was through fentanyl. And it was at the very beginning of this whole fentanyl situation. The class came back in from this scavenger hunt, and all they said is, we don't know what we want to do, but we want to do something to wrap ourselves around this guy. They had just met him, but one of the classmates around him and his family, and we want to do something regarding fentanyl awareness. And if you go up to Santana Park in Corona, which is a regional park, there are several benches that are there, and there were a bunch of trees that were planted, but there's an opportunity on this. It's a pathway with these benches, and it's just got different phrases and sayings. And it's more like a meditation thing for you to go and just think and do things. And this will be around for years. And the impact that had when we did the grand opening of that park portion there, we heard from mothers who lost their children because of fentanyl. And I'm proud to say that we were part of that Furthermore, we then advanced and worked with our district attorney to launch the fentanyl awareness program. And so our chamber was very active in that, separate from the leadership class, but we took what the leadership class was doing and we took it a step further.
Yeah, no, it's interesting you bring up that last one. So let me give you a little tidbit on that one, Bobby, because that was my year when I did go through the
Thank
leadership
you.
collaborative program. Yeah, and I was actually the last one to comment on because what you do is you could do like a round robin. Everybody engages and comments on like what should our ideas for this community good project be, and when we came back from that class, I think you had made that announcement about what had happened to our the gentleman who lost his brother. And
Right.
and that was my feedback. So I'm the one that kind of shared that in that setting at the end after we'd kind of gone through the whole list of everything. And so it was really cool for me to just see how that idea transpired into all of the things that happened as a result of that. So it's cool to hear you share that extra. I didn't realize all the additional things that had gone in and all the stories that people talk about. I've heard a couple of those, but actually I had one story on that one where we had one guy who he came to our first year of our leadership collaborative program. And when we were doing the interview for him, I was telling him about what the idea behind the community goods project. So I was just sharing what we did in Corona, and he was like, "Oh, I've been there. Like I go for there all the time." And I was there the other So I told him about it. He lived right down the street from that place. He went there that night, and while he was there, he met like two ladies that were telling him the story about how they had lost their son to fentanyl. So that was something that because he was talking about the story that I shared with him and had that experience too. So it's cool to see how that kind of all comes together.
So Zeb, I pray that you keep this portion in right here, people. This is what your job is all about. This is the impact that you are making on people's lives. You never know who you're impacting, the decisions that your chamber makes, the decisions that you as a leader in that chamber, what you are doing today and how it will impact the lives for many other people to come. Okay, I'm done. I'm done.
No, that's great. And one of the things that I want you to kind of speak to our chamber profession and our colleagues a little bit. Just advice. I've looked up to you as a mentor in this space. You've been very kind and invited me to participate in a bunch of different things. And if you could give advice to people that are just starting out or people like myself, what kind of advice would you give to our peers?
You give me a lot of credit, Zeb, and I've learned more from you than you probably have learned from me. And I hope that this comes across the right way to all of you that are listening. Be as humble as possible. You never know what the person that you're going to be engaged with is going to have challenges, or maybe their world is caving in and they just need a friend to listen to. If you're brand new in our industry, welcome. Man, I tell you what, it is the best of the best. It is the opportunity of a lifetime for you to help others. It is an opportunity of a lifetime for you to improve. And how do you go about doing that? I'm going to speak to those that have been, that I call seasoned in our industry. Thank you. Thank you for being part of an industry that makes a tremendous difference. A community without an active chamber of commerce will be a community that will not exist too long. We want to embrace our communities and help set the direction. And you, by being a seasoned chamber employee, a CEO, and now going back to everyone on this call, whether you're brand new or not, you're at the right place at the right time. And I want to encourage you to open up and talk to neighboring chambers. Yes, you may be competing for some similar dollars, but really, what are you competing for? You're competing to share as much good about the industry that you represent. Find out a little bit about your neighboring chamber employees. so that you can build the relationships with them. I highly recommend that you don't get into the stealing of employees back and forth, but let's talk about how we can improve and work together. One of the best things that has happened to me is being able to meet individuals like Zeb. And he has shown me so many new things, even though I've been in the industry, about 15 years longer than him, but that's okay. He's got all these things. I mean, look at how the internet has exploded in the last 20 years. This conversation that we're having right now, and as you're watching this wasn't really around or accessible when I started my career in 2001. So people like Zeb, and I'll talk about a couple of, well, I'm not going to mention others, but I had a great opportunity to do a podcast or do some similar type of panel with a young man that had been in his chamber as the CEO for less than 2 years. And that guy is rocking his community in a positive way. He's bringing new energy. So it doesn't have to be someone that's been around for 20 years. It can be someone that has experience and enthusiasm. And I just encourage you to take time for yourself. Now, this is Bobbyisms. That is what Bobby didn't do. My life was intertwined 100% with the chamber. I would do chamber on the weekends. I would do chamber at night. I'd wake up at 1 a.m, jump on the computer. I don't recommend that for everyone, but for me, it worked. For me, it totally worked. What it did was it allowed me to work at 1 a.m, and then I could go back to sleep and rest. But it was on my mind all the time, so I took care of it. And there's been opportunities that I've been able to spend with my family, and they've been around the chamber world, and that worked for our family. It may not work for yours. You know your family best, and you know you best. But be truthful and be honest. If you're married, I pray for you to have an open relationship with your spouse, to be able to communicate, and for them to understand the position you're in, and that you stay faithful to your relationship, but that you also are able to do great things in your community. I just want to say that I've seen so many people excel in this industry, and they do it because their heart is in the right place. And let me tell you, it's not always easy, but that's why you want to build those relationships, so that if 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you just got chewed out by your board chair, you have someone that you can pick up the phone and call. It shouldn't be your spouse. They don't need to hear all this, because then they're going to question, why are you staying working? Why would you stay working for that person? Pick up the phone. Zeb can call me at any time. And all of you, if you want to call me, I'd be glad to take your call. My number, I'll be glad to share it, is 951-733-1836. If I don't know you yet, please just text me and give me your information. If I do know you, feel free. All of you, please call. Life is worth living. And this chamber industry is the best industry out there. I'm here to help. I'm here to listen. And I'm also here to learn. At 70 years old, I'm still learning, but I'm grateful that my board allowed me the opportunity to step out and retire when I wanted to retire, before they wanted me to retire.
That's excellent, Bobby. And then let's wrap it up with this. I know we do an economic forecast, and our chamber colleagues got together to kind of recognize you. I had the distinct honor of trying to put into words kind of some of the impact that you've had in the chamber industry. But one of the things that has struck out to me the whole time, in your advice to me on occasion, but also your advice to your family and your children, is it's going along the lines of making an impact and having a difference. So that's something that is a non-negotiable for you. Would you talk about looking back on your time, impact wise, and advice for future chamber leaders, but also just people in general? Can you speak to that a little bit? Your message that you provide to your children and what you
Sure.
hope to accomplish in your time here as
Sure.
well?
I was just going through papers during my retired life. Now I'm going through storage bins that have notes back that my dad had collected stuff. And I mean, it's amazing what I'm finding. But my mom had tragically passed in 1992, way too young. And found the notes that I had given at, she received an award from a women's organization. And of course, because she had passed, she wasn't able to receive it. So I accepted it on her behalf. But in these notes was this very poem that I have stated day in and day out. And this goes back to where I just focus in and make sure the kids understand. Your children are going to they're going to look at you as the example. Your board's going to look at you as the example. Your staff is going to look at you as the example. And it's not so much what you say verbally, it's really the actions you do. The poem goes like this: the purpose in life is not just to be happy. The purpose in life is to have mattered whether or not you ever existed on the face of this earth at all is vastly more important than that temporary or egotistical illusion called happiness. Those words have meant so much, and we recite those on a regular basis when the kids were little, and dinner time, Thanksgiving, whatever occasion we could possibly think of, we would be saying those words. And our grandchildren today know those words. And my grandson, the oldest one, who is now 15, almost 16, he says that poem. But it's more than just those words. It's what we do with it. So I want to just say thank you, Zeb, because you have been a person that has maintained the friendship, has reached out on numerous occasions, and I've learned so much from you. And I want to say thank you. Thank you. I didn't realize it was 7 years that you've been in the chamber industry, and look what you've accomplished. And I've been around for 25 years in the profession, and I look and see what you've done in 7. I pray I'm still alive and functionable to see what you all the accolades and all the things that are done. And this video and what you're putting together will help other chambers down the road. So God bless you and thank you, because the purpose in life is not just to be happy. The purpose in life is to have mattered. Thank you, Zeb.
Well, excellent, Bobby. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for taking the time to chat with me. Appreciate all of that you've done for me and for our colleagues. And I see how much you pour into your staff, your team, your people, but also us as Chamber of colleagues. So just thank you for all of your friendship and guidance and wisdom. And thank you for chatting with me today.
Zeb, I appreciate you, buddy. And I love you, man.
Say likewise.
All right, pal. Take care.